We're going to get started, everyone. Hello, my name is Kindy Kruller, Senior Program Manager at the Illinois Green Alliance, leading the partnerships and programs of the Building Energy Resource Hub. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to learn about ComEd's high performance design incentives. We have some wonderful speakers, but first I'd like to share a little bit about the Building Energy Resource Hub, a project of the Illinois Green Alliance. The hub serves as a clearinghouse for building retrofits, energy efficiency, decarbonization resources for commercial and multifamily buildings. We also help contractors understand the opportunity for building decarbonization through municipal and other financial opportunities that are emerging. We also want to help developers, building owners, property managers, and others with the planning, financing, and implementing of building retrofits in Illinois. The Building and Energy Resource Hub, as I mentioned, is hosted by the Illinois Green Alliance. We're a non-for-profit based here in Illinois. And this program of the Building Energy Resource Hub is done with Elevate, Illinois Climate Bank, ComEd, and the City of Chicago. We're also supported by funding from the U.S. Department of Energy, the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy under the Building Technologies Office, along with generous funding support from the Builders Initiative and ComEd. We have several industry partners that we lean on heavily, including BOMA Chicago, AIA Chicago, Powering Chicago, and more. We work closely with the City of Chicago, the City of Evanston, and the Village of Oak Park in helping advance their energy codes. Statewide, we work closely with the Illinois Energy Office, the Capital Development Board, community colleges, CDAC, county governments, and others to coordinate education offerings and expand the reach of the hub throughout the state. We have numerous goals that are listed and summarized here on this slide, but the purpose is really to provide education and training, peer connections to building professionals on advanced energy codes, policies. We want to prepare a workforce by supporting diverse contractors through either in-class trainings, networking with peers and more experienced contractors, and connecting to emerging jobs. We also want to provide a platform to connect contractors with a project pipeline and deepen everyone's understanding of advanced energy codes. In addition, we're also keeping a close eye on all of our emerging funding and financial opportunities. All of these tools and resources are available on the hub website that will go into the chat again, just to get you a quick overview of all of the resources that we have. The hub is growing capacity for commercial and building retrofits. Again, we really are focused on building owners and operators, contractors, and ultimately sharing financial resources for all of these audiences. Today, we have some wonderful presenters to share a ComEd tool, the design incentive tool. We have Brian Keller from Waypoint Energy, and we have Ben Heimer from Slipstream. We'll take some questions at the end, but don't hesitate to put any of your questions, comments, or inquiries into the chat. We have staffs, our program manager, Rimjim, standing by to answer your questions, and we'll also be putting links into the chat. With that, I would love to turn it over to Brian.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone, and thanks again for joining today's presentation. I will be doing an overview and go through the eligibility requirements for the ComEd commercial and industrial and public sector new construction offering. And then within that is our high performance design incentive. So I'll be getting to that and kind of connecting a few dots that way as well. Next slide, please. So first off, some very, very high level overview just on ComEd's energy efficiency program in general. So these programs and offerings and studies and all these additional services are all funded by all of us. So if you are a member, if you are within the ComEd service territory, homeowner, apartment renter, business owner, anything like that, we all pay a ComEd bill each month, and part of that ComEd bill is paying into these programs. So there'll be a little line item under the taxes and fees section that says energy efficiency programs. So we all pay in a little bit each month that all gets pooled together into a fund that then gets distributed out with services and these incentive dollars that can come to you for energy efficient projects. Yes, another good high-level overview of kind of the program portfolio that ComEd offers is there's not only a offering out there for everyone, but multiple offerings out there for everyone. So don't forget that when you're thinking about energy efficiency or new projects that you have on the horizon. Everything from free assessments, incentive programs, which the new construction offering falls under, instant discount or point of sale programs, and then other optimization programs as well, like commissioning and industrial studies. Next slide, yes. So yes, new construction program, what we're here to learn about today. So kind of what is our purpose, what is our mission behind this offering? So first and foremost, providing expert technical assistance. Technology and the needs of sustainability and energy efficiency are always evolving, always changing, always growing. We have a team of experts at your disposal to help kind of guide any recommendations or find new interesting ways within your design to help push that project forward and kind of advance it into benefiting the future as well. And then ultimately too, financial incentives for components of the design that exceed current Illinois Energy Conservation Code requirements. So that's a bit of a key there, is that where the incentive dollars come from or go into within your design is anything and everything that is exceeding what code is requiring. So that's kind of the big key there. And ultimately, we're trying to push your design further. The concept of let's design and build the facility correctly the first time. It's much easier when you have that blank sheet of paper at the design phase to add in many different elements that will help the life of the building be energy efficient, sustainable, environmentally friendly, rather than trying to go back in time with a 75-year-old building and trying to retrofit that way. Another key part I want to mention here down at the lower end of the slide in purple is this offering does provide both electric incentives for electric savings and incentives for gas savings if the project is both within the ComEd territory, obviously, and also within NICOR gas territory. So as we go through the slide, you'll see some mention of therm savings. So if you're within that NICOR gas territory as well, it's kind of a one-stop shop for both sides of electric savings incentives and gas savings incentives. Next slide. Another big picture overview just of the impact and the experience we bring with this offering. So the new construction offering has been implemented for over 15 years now. We have served over 1,100 projects that have impacted over 200 million square feet of building space. All this has resulted in 312 gigawatt hours and 4 million therms of energy savings, which is the equivalent of taking 49,000 cars off the road. And as you can see from our project map here, we serve the entire ComEd service territory. So we're not just a City of Chicago or surrounding suburbs program. If it's within the ComEd territory out throughout the more distant suburbs and more of the rural areas, we definitely counts as well. So keep that in mind when you have any projects or developments in the future. Next slide, please. All right, so where's our benefit? What are we going to get out of this program? So mentioned it a little bit in the previous slide, but ultimately, when we focus on the design phase of a building and kind of trying to think of everything and check all boxes in the beginning, we're going to ultimately increase building comfort and safety, reduce that facility's operating costs over the life of the building, reduce the environmental impact, and also, if there are any organizational sustainability goals that are looking to be met, this ties in perfectly with that as well. Next slide. And then on the design firm side, so we understand that participation within this offering, we're talking a lot about design phase and going into our design. Well, that's where the design firms come in, and that's where so we'll definitely be interacting a lot with you, and we understand there's a lot of time and effort that comes from your end. So we have some benefits for design firms as well. Free access to energy efficiency expertise. We have a third party kind of unbiased perspective. We can come in with a fresh set of eyes. We're not here to bias one way or the other. We're there just to provide an overall review of the design and offer some recommendations. This provides a recognition for sustainable design. It's always great to mention how you've participated with ComEd and taken every effort there. Obviously, the financial incentive can add funds to the project budget, and then also we offer a free web-based modeling tool as well, which we'll be going into further detail in the second half of this presentation. And then ultimately, too, some incentives available for the design firms directly. Those are additional incentive dollars. They do not get taken away from the owner's incentive for the building. They're set aside separately just for the time and effort provided, put in by the design firms. Next slide, please. All right, project eligibility. So probably the most important portion. So the next slide, I will go through in some pretty good detail to make sure we're covering all that. So first and foremost, located in the ComEd service territory. You can see by the picture here, all this gray area is what's considered the ComEd service territory. It is very much the Chicagoland area, the upper third, northeast portion of the state of Illinois. So if it's within that gray territory, then it's within the ComEd service territory. So therefore, that's start number one. Point number two would be the project needs to be at least 5,000 square feet or greater. Oftentimes, this is very easy to hit. A lot of projects are far over 5,000 square feet, but every once in a while, we run into kind of a smaller project, whether it's small retail or a tenant space build out that is less than 5,000 square feet and might not be the best fit for this offering. Mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again and probably mention it a few more times as we keep going through. The design must exceed current Illinois Energy Conservation Code requirements. So we are thinking of things that are above and beyond what the code minimum requires. That's where the energy savings will be, and that's where the incentive dollars are coming in to kind of help aid. The project needs to also be in the design phase or prior to permit date. So arguably the most important point here is we need to be engaged with your project while it's still in the design phase. If we are past permit date, into construction documents, construction's already happening. Unfortunately, that's too late for this offering, but there are other offerings through ComEd that could help at those points as well. So it's not too late for other things, but too late for this one specifically. The building must be commercial building. There are other offerings for residential that are new construction as well. But for this one specifically, it needs to be a commercial building. Multifamily and condo buildings do count as commercial buildings. So you can think of those as commercial as well. And then also there is a major renovation component to this program. So we're not just talking about brand new builds or additions onto an existing building, but if you do have a major renovation project, kind of picturing that everything's ripped down to the studs and you're starting fresh, that can qualify as well. We just require that at least 2 of these 4 components, these primary building systems, are part of that scope of work. So for example, we have the building envelope, the lighting of the building, primary heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and also qualified refrigeration. So if you are doing kind of a full redesign of at least 2 of those 4 building systems within your greater than 5,000 square feet within ComEd service territory project, then it can count for a major renovation as well throughout this program. Next slide, please. All right, so some more details and some offering basics. We'll move on to the next slide. So here we have a timeline of kind of how a typical project goes and kind of participates within the program. So key here, kind of this big highlighted purple, fully engaged area. So right in the mid to late concept design, early to mid design development, and schematic design in between, that's really the sweet spot, the best time to engage with our program. So for example, a thing that we often say is it's never too early to get involved, but it can only be too late. So even if you're very early in concept design and there's maybe not much going on yet because it's just very high level concept, that's okay. Still reach out to us, still talk with us. We can kind of get the wheels turning on a few things. And then as that concept design kind of continues, gets closer to schematic, that's when we can really fully engage as well. To get you set up and entered into the offering and paired up with one of our fantastic engineers to kind of start that process. So don't ever think it's too early, or don't ever think, oh, the future of this project is still up in the air with funding and everything. All that is fine. Engage with us, get started in the program. We can work with you as that project progresses, whether it gets delayed for a few weeks or the budget kind of shifts a little bit. That's all fine. We can work with you on that as well. And then ultimately, sorry, if you could bump back to that slide really quick, sorry. The last thing I want to mention here too is, so we're talking about financial incentives. Where do those come into play? So we understand with the new construction offering, it is a bit of a long-term relationship. A lot of times these projects, especially if we're engaging early on in the concept design, it could be multiple years before the project is fully constructed and up and running. So the incentive payment is, final approved and sent out once the project is the construction's completed and the project is done. So there is a bit of a long-term commitment until the payment is received, but ultimately it'll need to be kind of verified that everything that was laid out in the design was properly implemented, and the full incentive payment can be paid out at the very end. All right, next slide, please. We also have 2 different pathways that can be enrolled in within this program. So we have our best practices pathway, which takes a number of different building types. And if your project falls within one of those building types, you can go through the best practices. It's a kind of a curated package of different measures that can be implemented within your design. So there's a form, you can look at that in terms of what are required measures, and then some other kind of extra credit measures that can add on additional incentive. You take that incentive amount, multiply it by the square footage of the project, and you can then kind of self-calculate that incentive. A little bit more streamlined, a little bit more transparent, and it kind of you can get a better ballpark idea in the beginning stages. And if we have a project that either does not fit into one of those building types, then we also have something that was referred to as our performance pathway. This is a little bit more customized approach, a little bit more energy modeling heavy, to where we're going to put together an energy modeling of the project to then predict the future energy savings and then base some incentive dollars off of those energy savings. Next slide. So a little bit more about the best practices. I mentioned those building types. So here they are: multifamily and assisted living, office and medical office. A new one for this year is office interior. And then, so if it's a more of a that tenant space build out, like I mentioned, but it is greater than 5,000 square feet and checks all those other eligibility boxes, we do have a best practices pathway for that this year. Retail and grocery, warehouse and light industrial, and then parking garages as well. So if your project is one of these or even multiple of these, you've got an underground parking garage, first ground level retail, and then multifamily up above, you can still take part in each of these individual pathways. And the image over on the right-hand side here kind of lays out a little bit. This one specifically is the example for warehouse. It has a few required measures. In this case, we have advanced wall assembly, advanced interior lighting, which then provides a excuse me, I misspoke a little bit. So there's the ultimate required measures that add up to 9 cents per gross square foot, and then those further ones down below, advanced wall assembly and so on. Those are kind of the extra credit you could add some more incentive on if you are able to implement each of those. But yes, so that's just an example there. And then the next slide, I believe, has even a little bit more of an example as well. So best practices, what we're really aiming for. So the incentive is calculated on a per square foot basis, and we're really aiming for a 2 to 3 year payback with these incentives. So each of these measures that we have listed here, with the incentives, by implementing those, if maybe you weren't already planning on it, the incentives provided are aimed to reduce that additional budget that is caused by these to then, still provide a 2-year payback. So ultimately, we're not trying just to add more and more budget strain to your projects. We are looking to find kind of the lower hanging fruit that have a quick turnaround payback for them. But yes, this one's a great example of how everything is laid out, and you can kind of see what's already maybe being considered in your design or what you could add in on top of that. And then you're able to kind of get a ballpark estimate of what your incentive will be for that project based off of the square footage. Next slide. So here we have, so I mentioned kind of earlier in the slides, there's that design team incentive. So for best practices, there is a second sheet onto that PDF where it asks for some specifics on the project. So this image here is the example. If you also fill out all of this information along with, participate with our engineering team, scheduling calls, participating in those calls, any questions or communication back and forth we have, participating there, you are then eligible for an incentive of $5,000 plus 5% of whatever that owner's incentive is. And once again, I'll just mention that doesn't take away at all from the owner's incentive. That is, 5% on top of the full 100% that owner's going to get as well. So something to think about when engaging with our program. There is some incentive in there for you as well. Next slide, please. A little bit more about the performance pathway. So our program engineers provide some technical assistance in energy modeling to identify those energy savings opportunities within the building design. So a little bit more in depth, a little bit more of a time consuming process, but also this performance pathway is what's been going on for that full 15 years of the program. So I say more time consuming, more in depth. We're definitely experts at it, so it's nothing to be too intimidated by. But ultimately, the energy savings are calculated by comparing that energy model for the design versus baseline code. And then our next slide goes into some more detail on what those incentives are. So here, I like this horizontal bar graph down here. We have kind of code baseline in the middle, and then that proposed design, and then we've got that delta kind of circled in the dotted line there, where that's where the savings are. So that's kind of what we're looking for within this analysis. And then next slide, please. We have, okay, so real quickly, I'll just mention that the incentives for performance pathway are 7 cents per kilowatt hour saved and 30 cents per therm saved. So, excuse me, 35 cents per therm saved. That'll be on a future slide, but I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I turn too much attention to the high performance design incentive. So here is amongst all the other technical support and incentives for both the owner and the design firms, we have even more incentives to offer. So here, the high performance design incentive does have a few more eligibility requirements on top of what I've already explained. So for example, on top of all those others, the project needs to be at least 20,000 square feet or larger. And then it also needs to make sure that we're applying early on in the schematic design phase. So before we talked about still in the design phase, before permits, that could be DD. But here we're looking specifically for early schematic design. So a few more extra things to think about when considering this. And ultimately the goal is to achieve a green rating system certification. There's also electric building requirement details that if they are met, that qualifies for this incentive as well. And then also this incentive is hoping to kind of help offset some energy modeling performance and submissions of documents. So if there's additional consultants that need to get involved for any type of green rating system certification, this incentive is here to kind of help that as well. Ultimately, the incentives that are available, so $5,000 for achieving the certification that you're pursuing, and then $10,000 for meeting the program's electric building requirements. There is also a 5,000 plus 5% owner's incentive for energy modeling and submission of any required documents throughout this process. And then my final slide here before I hand things off to Ben. This is a just big summary table of all kind of incentives and different individual, building types and best practices performance, all that good stuff. So when in doubt, you can kind of reference this for some high level information. Each of those building types through best performances has their own space that kind of explains and lays out their incentive amounts per square foot. And then here at the bottom, performance pathway, 7 cents per kilowatt hour saved and 35 cents per therm saved. So a good summary just to reference to. But that wraps up everything from my side. I can now hand things off to Ben to go into more details about the technical assistance that's offered through participating with us.
Brian, thank you so much. That was really helpful. And again, we'll have time for questions and answers after Ben's presentation. In the meantime, you can add any questions or comments into the chat, and we'll ask Brian to just take a peek there a couple of times while Brian is presenting. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben Hamer from Slipstream. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, Brian and his team do a great job of getting everyone enrolled into the program. I do want to just stress again how important it is to get in early. You really don't need a lot of information to get into the program. We just have like a one-page form. We need to know where the project is, roughly how big it is, and some contact information for you and the design team. Anyone can apply. It could be the owner, could be the owner's project manager, architect, engineer, developer, doesn't matter. Sometimes we get applications from all of those parties and have to sort it out on over here. That's fine with us. We'd rather get your project in that's half baked and work with you to make it a reality. We'd much rather have that than for you to come in too late in the process and there's not much we can do to help. So yeah, definitely encourage you to reach out to Brian, reach out to me, get those projects enrolled. Next slide, please. So yeah, I lead our our team of engineers that provides the technical assistance. So once you're in the program, uh, me and my energy engineers will take over that relationship and work with you, figure out what the best pathway is for your project, work with you to, help in whatever way works with your system, your project. We certainly don't want to slow you down. We don't want to get in your way. We're not trying to make you look bad in front of your your owners, your clients. We're really here to support you in all kinds of different ways. So one of the ways is design review. So again, just having a third party look at your plans. What opportunities are there in the project to go above and beyond code? Where are things maybe not documented quite as well as they could be? Be surprised how many projects I look at that really aren't detailing out the code requirements for exterior lighting controls, for example. So that's one of the things we often catch and help teams figure it out. And not only, have that documentation in there so that the contractor implements it correctly, but also finding those low cost, easy ways to go above and beyond code, squeeze out a little bit of extra savings, get those design incentives for your firm, get the owner some incentives, and just make everyone look good and get to the right solution for the project, maybe a little bit faster than you otherwise might. So we also have a lot of great technical resources available. Brian talked through the best practice offerings where we've really taken a hard look at all of the opportunities for these 5 building types and really honed in on some target values that people can design towards that, 80%, 90% of projects should be able to meet those targets. It's nothing exotic, it's nothing aggressive, it's things that people are really comfortable with, but just kind of getting you there faster, delivering it in a way where you can just copy and paste it into your narrative, into your specs. Um, you know, you can copy and paste the sequence of operation. We're just trying to make it as easy as possible to squeeze a little extra savings out of your projects. So we can help you with that. Um, if you've got projects that are needing to meet the Chicago Sustainable Development Policy, the ComEd offering now gets you points through that policy. We can get you 20 points or potentially more based on the details of your project, but that's an easy way um, to incorporate some of those things and show your ownership that you're on the right track. Um, I've worked with a lot of different engineering firms, architecture firms, different programs around the country. Some of our frequent repeat participants tell me that, yeah, when we work on these programs in other states, we have to charge our owner because it takes a lot of time to go through these programs. We try to make it really easy, a couple meetings, 2 or 3 meetings throughout the project, try to really streamline it and work within your process, not adding a bunch of extra work. I know even some of the other programs that ComEd offers have big, long workbooks, and people feel like they've been kind of burned in the past by, getting stuck or committed to, really more than they intended to. But we make it very easy. Again, 1-page application to get your design incentive. We're asking you to fill out a 1-page PDF, for example. So we're really trying to make it easy to participate and something that adds value. And the energy analysis, again, getting to that right solution faster. When I worked for a big architecture firm, I would, all the time be asked to run this new facade analysis, you know, a special kind of glazing, maybe some exterior shading, different solar heat gain coefficients, and you know that was fine, but a lot of times what was missing was looking at the building holistically. You know, those improvements are important or can be important for certain projects, but how does that really stack up against investments we could be making in the lighting system, in the HVAC system, in ventilation controls? So helping to really break the project down, look at it holistically, figure out where there are really good opportunities to go above and beyond code, really have a big impact on energy cost, energy use intensity. Maybe your clients care about carbon. Where can we really make the biggest impact and focus on those things first? And maybe we, you know, don't worry so much about the other measures that don't really progress our goals forward. So those are all things that we can help with. We can do the energy analysis here in-house. If you prefer, we can do that and get you the results and in a nice report format with an incentive offer along with it. Or we'll talk about in a minute, there's a methodology where the design team can really take the lead on it. We have tools available that you can use, and we'll help you get started with that, do some training and quality control, and then you can run with that and really own the energy analysis piece. So there's a bunch of different ways to work with us. Next slide, please. So the design incentives are, there's three different components here that are all a la carte. So we recognize that a lot of projects now are pursuing some kind of certification, so third-party green rating system or sustainability goal. So we want to support the best or most robust of those standards. So a couple versions of LEED here, Green Globes, Passive House, Living Buildings Challenge. These are all pretty aggressive certifications where if you're going for those things, you know, if you can show us that you're on track to meet these requirements, like the energy component of these standards, then we can award this component of the incentives. I especially want to point out here that, you know, those are all kind of pay to play or fee-based certification systems, but there's a couple here that are more of a DIY or more of a free option. So if you can show us through your own calculations that your building is zero energy ready according to the DOE definition, then you're eligible for this incentive. So that's again like a kind of a free certification. Similarly, if your owner's interested in targeting a real world EUI target for, you know, for office, school, multifamily, something like 30 EUI is a good target. It's maybe not too hard to achieve, but will require some kind of best practice design strategies to get there. We can do that. If you've got a special building type, a laboratory, a hospital, something like that, you know, we can work with ownership to set a custom target for that building. And then if you're on track to meet that target, again, you'd get this $5,000 bonus. So again, just trying to support the certifications that are out there and help kind of defray some of the cost of pursuing those things. Next, please. New one as of last year was this electric building incentive. So ComEd is getting behind electrification, heat pumps, and all electric buildings. So if you're interested in going down that pathway, we've outlined two options. The first option is really simple. It's just the building is all electric. There's, you know, no gas connection to the building. It's utilizing heat pumps and maybe heat pump water heating and other things to make the building all electric. But recognizing that, especially for commercial buildings, the technology maybe isn't quite yet available to do that. So we have some exceptions carved out for things like central domestic hot water heating systems, which can still use gas, commercial kitchens, emergency generation, high outside air, dedicated outside air units, things like that. So we've carved out some exceptions. And if you can demonstrate that this building is electric ready, maybe has the infrastructure to someday convert to all electric, and is primarily heated by heat pumps, then we can get you $10,000. That's, I think, that's pretty exciting. That's a lot of money when you think about it in terms of, maybe that's a week of someone's time that you could spend rewriting your specs or drawing up some new details for your heat pump water heater, whatever it is. We're trying to support that transition, and so the design firms and the owners of these buildings don't have to kind of pay for those kinds of innovations. And then finally, we have our energy modeling and documentation incentive, which mirrors the best practice worksheet. So that's $5,000 plus an additional 5% of the owner incentive. And really, that just involves using our Sketchbox tool early in design to model the building, identify those energy efficiency opportunities and strategies, and working with us to turn that into a report that we can then put in front of the architect, put in front of the owner, and then try to move those ideas forward. None of this carries any, risk to it. There's no cost share. There's no commitment to do the things that we talk about early in the design. It's really just helping you make good decisions if you go through this process with us. And then later everything gets all VE'd out, that's fine. But we want to make you informed and give you all the tools you need to get to that design solution faster than you otherwise might. Hopefully avoid some of that value engineering painful stuff towards the end of the project. Next slide, please. So I'll talk about our Sketchbox tool just generically for a minute, and then I plan to do a really quick demo. But this is a tool that we've developed here in-house. We use it to do modeling on the programs. It's also available for anyone who wants to try it out. It's a free tool, and if you've enrolled a ComEd project, we can get you access to what we call the ComEd project environment, which gives you a few more features than the free basic version. And then we can pay you to use this within the program through that high performance design incentive. So it's a generic energy modeling tool. You can check it out even if you're working outside of your ComEd territory, but if you're in the ComEd territory, definitely recommend that you explore this early in the design process, because I think it's a really valuable tool, and it can generate some design incentives for you. I guess with that, I will share my screen. Just give me a moment to transition here.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, can everyone see a web tool?
Yep, looks great.
Okay. So our tool is a website. It runs DOE2 in the background, so the same modeling engine that supports eQuest. It is free, like I said. You don't need any special, software installed. So I encourage you to get an account. We do have, like I said, the ComEd project environment, which we can get you access to if you've got a project enrolled with us. We do have the latest energy codes built in here, along with some of the more popular compliance pathways. We've got dynamic defaults, which are great. So for example, the cost of electricity and natural gas, those are being looked up based on the location. You can overwrite these things if you have better information, or kind of restore that connection here. So that throughout the tool, you'll see that we've tried to eliminate most of the jargon to make energy modeling more accessible to a broader group of people. We've tried to give you really good defaults. Not every tool does that. And also just eliminate a lot of the labor associated with building an energy model and getting started, so you can get some results faster. Really more like during the hand sketch phase of a project. It's really hard to have real energy results feedback fast enough to support that process, but that's what this tool is all about. So I can build up just a really quick example project. Maybe it's a school, and let's say, so this is, what you call a shoebox modeling tool. You can model rectangles, but you can actually do quite a lot with those rectangles by building up different shapes. So we can change the aspect ratio, we can change the floor to floor height, we can change the glazing ratio by facade. So, maybe we've got 40% glass on the north, 25 on the south, and we get some visual feedback on what that looks like. You can have skylights, although that would be pretty unusual for a school. And then you can select your heating fuel. So, we support all kinds of things, typical fan coils, VAV, also, ground source heat pump, VRF, lots of different options. And then you can choose whether or not you want a dedicated outside air system, what kind of hot water heating. So that's all it takes to kind of build up a component of the energy model. And you can also have, what we call different shells. So maybe there's a gymnasium attached to the school. And, we can adjust some things and attach it to the school. So you can use this strategy to do, big warehouses and offices, mixed use towers that might consist of retail, parking, hotel, office, multifamily, you name it. So you can build up some pretty complicated programs with just the basic building blocks. But in this example, I'll just stick with two. So let's just say on the gymnasium, maybe we reduce the glazing here and add skylights and choose maybe a air source heat pump as a heating system. So anyway, that's all it takes to kind of establish our geometry. We can review our schedules. So here we have, typical school schedules. If you like the ASHRAE handbook defaults, you can use those. If you prefer just to set like a start and end time, we can do that too. And then moving on to baseline. So here's where all that energy code information gets populated. So we've selected the energy code here back on our home tab. That gets populated here. So that'll put in the right U values, solar heat gain coefficients, it'll take a pretty good guess at the equipment efficiencies based on the size of the project and how big we feel those pieces of equipment might be. And then you have the ability to come in here and edit things too. So, maybe this ventilation rate that's looked up from ASHRAE 62 is a little low, so we can put in a new value here. Maybe you're starting with an existing building shell, and so instead of a new construction wall value, you'd put in something, worse there to represent what currently exists. So there's a lot of flexibility there to kind of define your baseline. And then we can get into the fun part, which is analyzing energy efficiency measures. So this tool makes it really easy to ask and answer, really simple questions like, what happens if I change the window wall ratio or add an overhang to the facade or something like that. So you can ask a question, get it answered really quickly, or you can just apply a whole measure set where we're suggesting all the usual suspects. We're not only giving you good values for the baseline condition, but also what does a best-in-class design look like for, insulation, lighting. These can be dragged and dropped, moved around, collapsed to give you more space. So we've got, all the envelope things in there, lighting, of course, the recommendations that we have for the lighting power density will be different for a school and a warehouse and a multifamily building. So we're giving you good engineering judgment here to set your target values. Or you can also use your own value. Maybe the last school you did, you were able to get to 0.48 watts per square foot. So you can plug in your own values there too. And then, yeah, looking at heating and cooling equipment efficiencies, maybe DCV is already required here, so we don't need to worry about that. If we're using electric resistance, we don't need to worry about upgrading the hot water heater. So yeah, you can edit this list. You can add cost information if you like, if you know that, your wall insulation will cost whatever it is, 5 cents a square foot or something. You can start to populate cost information in here and do some economic analysis. But I'll just jump right to results. This is all running in the cloud. Usually takes a minute or two to run all those models. One of the great things about this tool, we're not just running a baseline model and a proposed model with big question marks on how you got from one thing to the other. We're running each of those measures individually so you can understand early in the design process which measures are really contributing a lot to your project, which ones are maybe at the point of diminishing returns and not worth pursuing. So ideally this will we'll finish in a minute and we'll have some things to look at. I do want to make sure we leave some time for questions as well. But of course, this is a demo, so
No
is-
problem.
I do have another one pulled up here just
Okay.
while we're waiting. But so we have got some nice results. You can refactor these in terms of things that you might care about. So maybe you care about reducing cooling load or care about reducing carbon dioxide or site energy. In any case, you can see which measures really are impacting the project in a big way. Roof insulation, probably not. The code's already pretty good. It's at the point of diminishing returns there. You can probably do well with air sealing. Certainly LED lighting, achieving low power density, doing some high-end trim on that lighting design after you've installed it. Those are great opportunities still. Increasing the efficiency of your energy recovery system and low flow fixtures. This really shows you where to focus your design efforts and what can generate incentives for that project. So you can use this tool or you can rely on our team to run this analysis for you. Either way, definitely encourage you to check this out and get into the program.
Great. Thanks, Ben. We appreciate that. I'm gonna jump back to our slideshow. We do have a couple case studies, but because of time, we are just going to go through them. We'll leave them in the downloadable version of the presentation on our website, but I would love just to turn it over to Brian for a quick wrap up.
Yeah, thanks so much, everyone. Not too much to wrap up. Really appreciate your time and all
Yeah.
the questions that came in. So hopefully we answered them in the chat if we did. Otherwise, we can definitely address them for a few minutes here now too. So thanks again for listening in, for attending our webinar today, and happy to go through any questions that the audience may have.
Great. I don't see any questions.
There is one question
go ahead,
that
Rachel.
was in the there was one question in the chat. Maybe Ben, this is for you. So Zoe is asking, for FIES, what is the requirement to show that you are on track? How can you show those that you're on track? Is it a signed contract or some correspondence?
I am not as familiar with the FIES process. I know there are certain tools that that folks use to demonstrate compliance with the FIES requirements. WFI being one, and I think there's some other ones. So, if you can show us that you're on track to meet the energy performance requirements of that standard, then that's what we're looking for. So maybe that's an energy modeling report from your tool. Maybe it's a letter from the FIES reviewer. I know for LEED, for example, there's like the LEED online portal or you can give someone else access and we can go and see if those credits have been reviewed and accepted. So there's kind of a little bit different way to do that for each of those rating systems, but it's just, we'll work with you, whatever makes sense. Sometimes just a one-page memo that you sign is good enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, Rimjit?
No, there was another question, but Brian answered that in the chat.
Okay,
So we're
great.
good.
I don't know if that question was, is there a time frame to this program that we should be aware of?
No, not necessarily. So, program years run with the calendar year. So, come January 1st, we're early on in the new 2025 program year. So, everything we spoke about today in terms of incentive levels and incentive offerings, is technically, valid or good through the end of the calendar year, December 31st. But we've been in this program's been around for over 15 years. So, for years to come, it's pretty likely that everything will be very similar. But I guess you could think about everything we spoke about today is for this calendar year, January 1st through December 31st.
Yeah, and to clear projects that enroll in this calendar year, if your
Yes.
project finishes 4 years from now, ComEd will honor, the program year in which you applied.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and thanks everyone for joining our webinar for the Building Energy Resource Hub. This is just one way that we are sharing resources and information with all of you. We also are actively looking for volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering, go to our website and give us a quick email. We also have an online volunteer form. If you want us to feature one of your projects or buildings, we're always excited to learn more about implementation and use those opportunities as case studies. We have a wonderful newsletter. I'm also help curate it along with the team here at the Hub, but we are always trying to bring you the best and newest information, especially as the world in particular related to financing and funding is changing, evolving, and new products and services are being added. We also would really love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and you can always send us any questions. We are revamping our website all of the time, so we encourage you to stop by, see what we've updated, and until next time, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers. Thank you, Ben and Brian, and we appreciate all of your engagement with the Building Energy Resource Hub, and everyone enjoy the snow. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.